So within the app, you must have seen at least three screens. First screen was containing two buttons, which had the add record and view record. Then the next screen was for, there were three edit texts wherein you could type in data that you want to store. And the third screen used to appear whenever you wanted to view the records, right? So what I'll do is first I'll go and create two buttons for the first screen. So to save us some time, I copy pasted it from my previous, one of my previous projects. And but I'll explain this to you. There are two layout, width and height, wrap content, two normal buttons. Text is written, add records and view records. I have put on click XML attribute to both of these, add records and list records. And because it's a relative layout, I have put the layout below attribute also, and respective to IDs have been given. Now, as these two buttons are made, we have also like put two on click attributes here. So we'll go to main activity and put these two attributes there. The first name was add records and list records is the second name. So these two records have been mentioned, and I have put two intents here, intent I, new intent, this activity dot class. So basically whenever a user clicks on add record button, then they will be taken to this new activity, and if they click on list records, then they'll be taken to this activity. Of course, we have to first now create these activities, but we are pretty much done with our first screen. We might have to come back here to do a small bit of tweaking that is required, but as the time comes we'll come back. But for now we'll move away from the screen and start creating these activities, because these are important activities for us to add and list the records. So I'll go to my folder and click on new activity. So this error is gone, and I will also create the other activity, which was add activity. Yeah, so these two are gone. Now we will enter these activities and make the relevant changes. Now you can see that I've already prepared a layout here. I'll explain this to you. This is the layout. There are three edit texts with hints in them: enter book name, author, reading status, and submit button is there. So this is exactly what you were seeing whenever you used to click on the add records button. And simple edit text, there's nothing complicated here. Hints are mentioned with IDs and layout, width and height. And finally a button with an on-click attribute, which is insert my books. After this, let me go to add activity and declare and define the button method there, insert my books. And now we will declare the strings that we are going to require. I'll name it as author name, reading status, and title of the book. These are the strings that we will be fetching from the edit texts, and I will also have to now make sure that these edit texts are rightly linked. So what I'll do is I will find the edit text that is going to give me the data, these three edit texts, and I will use get text and toString methods to convert it and save it in the database finally. The IDs are edit text 1, edit text 2 and edit text 3. Text. And because now we have the reference and we will be able to get the edit text from here, we will first call the get text and then toString, and now I'm going to make it get stored in the author string, right? Same I will do with rest two strings. And now if you have not understood it, I'll explain this to you. What I actually did it here was, just look at this first line, in this part of the line. This is the ID of the edit text, and I'm basically fetching the edit text from the layout, and I'm converting it to text and then finally to string, and then I'm storing it in the author string which we declared here, right? And similarly I'm also storing the rest other two edit texts in reading status and title. So now basically I have been able to capture whatever the user has fed in through the edit text, and now the next step would be to start inserting it in the database. Now to use the SQlite, which is basically there to help us deal with the databases, we will have to create a class to handle the database and everything. So I will go to this and I created this. So let me make a class which is called database helper, DB helper. This is something which I have created on my own. And as I do that, I get this class. Let me make some space here. And the next thing which we have to do is we have to extend SQlite helper here. Yeah. And now as you can see that it is showing that must be declared abstract or implement abstract method on create. So we will do that. And as we did this, we have these two methods, on create and on upgrade. You might not really need to work on this because this is required when you want to upgrade your database to next version. But right now we will be only dealing with how to create a database in an app and make it work. There is no default constructor available, and we will make a default constructor. Yeah. Within the on create overridden method, I went outside the Android Studio and I just read, or rather revised all the SQL information or knowledge that I had, and I created some queries which we used to make in SQL. I'm sure most of you would have encountered SQL, and if you're not encountered, then not to really worry, but you will have to appreciate that SQL is something which is different than the current thing that we are working on. But like, because you have to store data, you have to learn it a little bit. So what I did was I made some queries, and I'm going to copy paste them here, and here I have copy pasted them. Let me just tell you what these queries are actually doing. So those of you who know what SQL basically is, and how it works, if you really uh, put some concentration in these statements, you will be able to understand what exactly am I trying to do here. And those of you who do not know anything about it, I would request them to do some bit of googling and you will have to read a little bit about SQL, otherwise you will not be able to understand this entire thing. SQLite basically helps us to, or rather SQL basically helps us to create databases and then use them for our own good, right? So let's say you want to store data of some 500 records. You cannot keep on going creating 500 variables inside your app and then keep storing them, and tomorrow if you come to know that now it has become 5,000, then how will you create 4,000 500 extra variables? So in that case SQLite is required. And what basically what we have done here is SQLite, like Java, like any programming language, SQLite also entertains some kind of statements that it understands. And in SQLite, this is the kind of statements that you have to write if you want to tell the SQLite helper that I want to create a table. So you write create table, and then in single quotes you write my books, and then you put an opening brace, open parenthesis. You give a ID, and then you also tell what kind of field is this. This is basically a field that you have to mention that this is the name of the table my books, and the first field is called as underscore ID, and then you have the kind of field that it is this. It is a integer which is a primary key. It's also the primary key. So basically this field is going to be the exclusive one which will help you find any record inside the database if you know this key, right? And it is also auto increment. So next time you create another you add another thing inside this database, this will auto increment. And if your last entry was at number 3, then the next entry will become the number 4, right? And then we have written book title here, and then there is also mention of what exactly this book title field is all about. It's going to be a text, book author also text, and status also text. Everything is text here, right? So it just gives you an idea that this is very similar to what SQL asks us to do. The only thing is, in fact, we have used the exact same uh, query which we write for structured query language that SQL is, but the only thing is we have passed on that query in a format which is understood by SQLite helper, right? That's it. I think that's the straightforward way of saying this. Here what I've done is I've mentioned 3 books already in the SQL. So basically when you create the database, when the database gets created, then you will see that these 3 entries will already be there before even before somebody uses your app to put more entries. So let me remove 2 of these, and now we should be having only one entry already entered in the database. We will also have to look into this. Why is this DB looking red? All right, this is happening because this has to be the same variable that we have introduced here. So rather than doing 2 corrections, I will do 1 correction, and now this is gone. Right now, let me take you back. So this is not yet complete. We will have to work a little bit more on this helper class. But now let me take you back to the add activity, wherein we are inserting books here, and also do the next parts of this entire method insert my books, so that we can now introduce the adding part of adding the records to the database. Now as we come back to add activity, and because we have already created the database helper class, now I can create an object for it here, and I will also introduce another thing here, which is basically uh, if you guys remember, there is something called on create or on start, or basically all the overriding methods that we have been using. Like on create is one of those methods. There's another method called on start, and it basically is called automatically whenever the activity starts. And we need to call that method because we got to make sure that the database gets loaded into the system as a user reaches this screen. So we will do that. So I have put the onStart method, overridden onStart method here, and this will now ensure that whenever it starts, the activity starts, we have the database helper object available to us so that we can start accessing the database. There is an error here, but it will go away as we complete the entire program. Now, within this insert underscore my books, I will also have to put two more statements which will ensure that uh, these three strings eventually get saved in the database, right? So what is happening here is there is this dbh database helper class object which is calling this method insert books in db, and we are passing these three input parameters inside this method, and we are also generating a toast. There is this red sign here which tells us that this method cannot be resolved, and the precise reason is that we have not yet defined this method, and once we start defining this method, once we complete it, these errors will go away.